Okay, it's pie time. So what we're going to do is we're going to get the Microhawk Pi up and running. So one of the things I wanted to address real quick is I've seen out on the forums and stuff, a lot of people talking about how the Pi is exposed. In the reality, it really isn't. So if you notice on here, there's no components on the bottom side of the Pi. So when you put this thing in upside down, you're not exposing all your stuff. They're all protected, and the thing is these PCBs are made out of different kinds of materials like fiberglass and different stuff, so they're very sturdy and strong. And I've beat this thing like this and never had the components come off. They're really well protected. So I just wanted to kind of throw that out there. So what we're going to do is we're gonna put the operating system on the micro SD, and then it inserts in the back. And one of the things we're going to do is we're going to do this as a headless system, and how to be able to set this up for when we're working out in the field. So this one I've been using. So what I'm going to first do is I'm going to reformat this card. Sorry for the screen bubble. My card reader is actually in my laptop. So I'm going to format this card and destroy it. You don't necessarily have to do it, but we're gonna flash this card and put a whole new operating system, so it's not a bad thing. And then what I like to do is just pull it out and then reinsert it. But what we're gonna first do is we need to get the software to flash it. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna head over to raspberrypi.org. and we're going to go to the downloads tab, and then we're on Windows. I'm primarily a Linux guy, but I'm showing you guys how to do this under Windows, and you can do this under iOS too. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to download the software, and then we're going to install it. Okay, now it's installed. Let me close this window down, and you'll see it just kind of pops up. If it doesn't pop up down here, you can just do Raspberry RPI, and then you'll see the imager come up. Now in a lot of instructions you'll see where you're downloading some other image burner or something like that, but Raspberry Pi decided to build this utility that will do basically everything for you all in one. And what it does is it gives you a selection of the operating systems. This first operating system here is the full thing. It's got the desktop and everything on it. We're not going to use that one. We're going to choose to use the light version. Now the reason why we want to do this is if you install the full desktop, and you can, and then it allows you to connect to the HDMI part, hook up a keyboard and mouse, and then you can actually use it like a regular computer. But when you're flying this, you're not flying with a display. So why waste all those compute resources and disk space and power to run a display that you're not even going to be using, because it will use up more processing power. So now I'm going to stick my card in, and now I can select the SD card. Once you have that, you just choose write, and we'll say yes. And now that basically blows away everything that's on that card. So make sure you pick the right card, because if you accidentally had an external drive connected and stuff and you pick that one, you just blew that one away. So be careful. Now, the next thing we need to do while that's downloading, we're going to go grab Notepad++. Now the reason why you want to use Notepad++ is Windows Notepad out of the box doesn't understand anything about carriage returns. That's standard in mostly all the other operating systems. So it'll screw up your files. Oops. So we come here, Install it. Agree. Yes, 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 go. Finished. Okay. And it's done. So now you have a fresh image on the card, but it's not ready to go yet. We got to do some work on this thing. Because what we're going to do is we're going to have this thing so that this thing's field maintenanceable. When we're out at the flight field flying around and you want to be able to get into this Raspberry Pi to make some changes or anything, we need to have a way to do that, because you're not going to lug around all kinds of equipment, right? Maybe a laptop, and this will allow you to connect to it via the laptop. Okay, so now first thing we want to do is, now you see that the card is here, we need to add the ability to turn on SSH so that we can remote into the Raspberry Pi. And the way we do that is we create an empty file called SSH with no extensions. Now what this does, we're in the first boot configuration of this card. The next time once this boots into the Raspberry, it'll be completely different. It's going to take all this information and now build the operating system on the first boot. But put it in the empty file SSH in there. You're telling the Raspberry Pi that I want to be able to have secure login from remote via either Ethernet or serial port or anything like that. So once you have an IP address on the guy, you can do that, or through the USB cable. And that's the next thing now we're going to set up, is we're now going to set this guy up to be able to take and turn that one of the USB ports on the Raspberry Pi into an Ethernet device. And the way we do this is we got to tell it when it boots up to load a special driver, and we want to put this command right in between these words where it says root wait and quiet. You can see these words right here. So we're going to insert this right in between these two. And what we're going to add in is module dash load equals WC2. That's turning on the interface. And then we're also going to want to tell it to turn on the Ethernet. Save this. Now make sure you don't use just regular old Notepad, because then you would messed up this file. Okay, so now that one's saved. Now we need to edit this one called config.txt, and we're going to use the same file again. But this time we're going to go all the way to the bottom. This is the overlay file, and that's what we're adding is a overlay. Now overlays it's a bit complicated, and you probably won't ever delve into this, but if you really want to get deep into this kind of stuff, basically what you're doing is you're telling the operating system how you want the pins on the actual CPU configured and wired up. And then one of the things we're doing in here at this command right now is we're actually telling it, hey, use that USB port as an Ethernet device. And now we want to save this. So with those changes, this thing's basically ready to be booted. Now I just wanted to point out is you might go on the internet and you'll see a lot of people say how to build a headless version of the Raspberry Pi, and part of it is you'll see them also add in a bunch of configurations for setting up the Wi-Fi and everything like that, and so that you can get it boot in. What we're going to do is we're going to SSH into the Raspberry Pi, and then we're going to set it up remotely there, and it's way easier than trying to write all these configuration files. But now this guy's basically done, so the next step is to eject the card, plug it in. And now we just got to power this bad boy. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to run the USB power off my laptop and then plug in the USB cable into it. And you see her booting up. And I'm plugged into the second port on this. And that's also the port that you're going to use to remote into it. And I'm going to show you that in the next video. This video is really just on how to get the operating setup installed, and now you just let her boot up. And this is going to take a few minutes. And if you're curious to see what it's doing, you can plug into the HDMI port, which is right here. And then you can watch it booting up. It'll flash a multicolored rainbow screen for a little bit, and then eventually, once she's all booted up, she'll be at the command line prompt for you to do a login. And we're going to go over that in the next video. So that's it. That's the basic steps.